Welcome to Veterans Radio. We'll be talking to Brian Rooney, who is a U.S. Marine. Right now, it's Major Brian Rooney. Brian, good morning to you. Welcome to Veterans Radio.
Good morning. It's actually great to be back. I was on a long time ago.
That's right, you were, because you defended Lieutenant Colonel Chessani. Dale did an interview with you.
That's right. I was part of that defense effort with the Thomas More Law Center. I actually served with Lieutenant Colonel Chessani when he was with the 1st Marine Regiment, and I was attached to them during the Second Battle of Fallujah.
We're going to get into that Battle of Fallujah, and we're going to get into the Chessani affair in a minute. But your grandfather was Art Rooney. Your family owns the Pittsburgh Steelers. Art Rooney was the founder, and you sit on the board of directors of the Pittsburgh Steelers, as well as being a constitutional lawyer at the Thomas More Law Center. Now, you were still in college studying law when you enlisted in the Marines. You obviously didn't need a job. What prompted you to join the Marines?
Well, my grandfather took a chance on the Pittsburgh Steelers back in 1933, and my family, is not a tradition. We didn't traditionally come from money. My grandfather, was back in the 20s and 30s. If you were a Catholic in the Northeast, you were either a fireman, a cop, or a horseman. And my grandfather was a horseman, and he was a pretty good horseman at that, and did pretty well at the tracks. And he took a chance with the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise back in 1933, and it wasn't successful right off the bat, but after keeping at it for a long time, we became the most successful NFL franchise in history with 6 championships. And my grandfather, my parents, they always taught me that this country has given so much to our family that you always have to try to give something back. And when I was in law school, I was at a point in my life, I think I was around 24, 25, where I was thinking about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, knowing that I was in law school, that I probably would become an attorney. Was that enough? Can I do more? And am I doing enough? And my answer was no, and I wanted to test myself and give something back. And so one day there were recruiters at law school, and thankfully they were allowed on the campus, unlike the current Supreme Court Justice nominee, Ms. Kagan, who refused to allow military recruiters on Harvard Law School. Florida State, where I went, did. And it gave me the opportunity to talk to the recruiters. And, of course, the Marine Corps have the best uniforms. And I went towards the Marine Corps officer selection officer. I'll never forget him. He was Captain Joubert then. I think he became a major. I don't know if he's still in. But, one of the tipping points for me becoming a Marine was the fact that my grandfather's brother, Tom Rooney, was killed in action at the Battle of Guam. He was a Marine. And then I have another uncle, my dad's brother, Art Jr., was a Marine in the 50s. And so I had an affinity towards the Marines, and the Marines, the saying, can you be one of the few, the proud?
Right.
Do you have what it takes? And I wanted to see if I had what it took. And the Marine Corps was the only service outside the Coast Guard, I believe, at the time, that made every officer go through the exact same training.
Well, I wanted to get into that, but the comment you made about them having the best uniforms, I can't tell you how many times I've heard Marines say that. I ask them, why you join the Marines? Well, they're tough. You test yourself, and they got the best uniforms. They do.
My brother was Army, and I always gave him a hard time because his uniforms were so horrible. And if you look at the old World War II movies, especially like Patton, they had great uniforms back then. I don't know what happened, but
yeah, something went wrong over the years. We tend to forget that officers, admirals, generals, they start off the same way that we do in boot camp. And you said you went through the same training as the Coast Guard, but Marine training is a little tougher than most of them, I believe, unless you're getting into the Rangers or Airborne, whatever. How tough was it on you as a future officer?
At the time, it was the toughest thing I ever went through in my life. I played football my entire life through college, and you do two a days, 3 days in the summertime. I played high school football in Florida, and I can tell you, we're coming up on the month of August, and 2 and 3 days in August in South Florida is a tough nut to crack.
They're brutal.
But going through officer candidate school in Quantico, Virginia in the summertime was not just incredibly difficult physically, but mentally it was the most challenging thing I ever did, because they psychologically isolate you, and they break you down and build you back up. And I really think that I don't know if I would have truly known myself unless I went through that, because you realize how much you can take, and what you can put yourself through and pull yourself out of. And we started with 75 men. Now, this was before 9/11, so it was a little different. But we ended up with 35 men, and a lot of people
40
washed out.
washouts.
We had a lot of washouts. We had a lot of drops on request, and we had some physical injuries. But in the officer candidate school, it's a little different than boot camp in the sense that boot camp you can't drop on request. After the 7th week of officer candidate school, you can say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. And you have a lot of people do that. But officer candidate school is different than boot camp because they want to weed you out. They want to see who can be a leader of Marines, who really wants to do it. Not to disparage any of my enlisted brothers and sisters, but the attitude's a little different there because they need to get you through, and so they'll recycle you until the point where they decide, well, you just don't have what it takes, and we're going to wash you out.
I experienced that actually in Vietnam. You could get out of the military in my CB battalion by just saying I can't take it anymore. And there's a guy from Michigan that I tried like crazy to get him to quit, not do that, don't drop out. And there was, it's hard to believe that somebody could actually do it once they were in country, but he said, I can't take it anymore. Of course, that put you up number 1 for the draft, so from that standpoint, it wasn't a smart thing to do either.